She walks into the restaurant alone, and 23 tables turn at the same time. Not for her face, not for her dress, not for the man waiting at the back. For one piece of jewelry catching the candlelight as she crosses the room. It is not the biggest stone in the building. It is not the most expensive object on a body in that room. But it is the only thing that made 90 strangers look up from their plates at exactly the same moment. This happens more than the industry admits. In elevators, in airport lounges, in coffee shops. Certain pieces of jewelry do not sit on a person. They enter a room, reorganize the attention of strangers for a few seconds, and then everyone politely returns to their lives. The question almost nobody asks afterward is what actually caused it. Why that piece? Why that wrist? Why that ear? Today we are answering it. 5 jewelry brands that make strangers stop and stare, with a real verdict on each. Because there is a difference between a piece that turns heads and a piece that is actually worth your money. Sometimes those overlap perfectly. Sometimes they do not overlap at all. The brand at number 1 is by a wide margin the most extreme example on this list, and you will understand why we saved it for the end. But first, the single idea that explains everything that follows. The thing that makes a piece of jewelry magnetic across a room is almost never the price tag. The stranger staring from 20 feet away cannot read the stamp inside the band. They cannot count the carats. The human eye reacts to silhouette and scale, to unusual geometry, to a shape the brain has not already seen 10,000 times. A familiar chain in a familiar weight produces 0 head turns, no matter how much was spent on it. An unusual cuff, a sculptural cone, an enamel animal, a link that looks like architecture, those register before any logo does. Hold that thought. In 5th place, Miansai. If you have ever caught yourself staring at someone's wrist across a dinner table without quite knowing why, there is a real chance you were looking at the Miansai screw cuff. It is the brand's signature piece, and one of the smartest pieces of design in modern American accessible jewelry. A clean, slightly oval band of metal that wraps the wrist, closed by a tiny screw that looks like something pulled off the deck of a sailboat. That nautical detail is not accidental. The brand started with leather and brass hooks borrowed from sailing rigging, and the visual language never let go. The screw cuff now exists in stainless steel, sterling silver, and gold-toned variations, and it is worn by men, women, executives, and surfers without anyone arguing about it, which is rarer in jewelry than the industry pretends. Why it pulls eyes across a room comes down to silhouette. Most bracelets dissolve into the visual noise of a wrist. The screw cuff sits with weight, with edges, with a closure that catches light differently from a clasp. From across a coffee shop, the eye registers that the wearer is wearing something specific, even when no one can name what. The verdict on Miansai is generous. The brand sits in an accessible tier compared to anything else on this list. The materials hold up to daily wear in ways most fashion jewelry never does. There is no oversized logo on the front, no signature screaming for attention. The attention happens because the shape is doing the work. As a first statement piece for someone still figuring out what they actually like, this is one of the most honest entry points in the category. You are paying for form, not for a name. In 4th place, Vita Fede. There is a moment in certain restaurants where a woman crosses the floor, and you cannot tell what is on her hand or her ear, only that something there is doing something strange to the light. Vita Fede is often the answer. The Italian phrase translates roughly to faithful life, and the brand has built its identity around shapes that do not exist anywhere else in the jewelry case. The signature is the cone, a small, sharp pyramid the brand calls the Titan, appearing on rings, on bracelet stations, at the tips of ear cuffs. There are spike-tipped studs. There are mixed metal bangles that combine matte and polished surfaces inside a single band. The pieces look less like jewelry and more like miniature contemporary sculpture, the kind you might see lit inside a glass case at a museum. That reaction is engineered on purpose. The geometry is the product. A cone on a ring is a shape the brain has to slow down to process, which means a stranger looks twice before they look away. The verdict has to be split, because Vita Fede does not build every piece out of the same materials. Some of the most striking designs are produced in plated brass, which means the dramatic look comes with a durability question the showroom rarely volunteers. Plated brass worn daily against skin, against jacket cuffs, against bag straps, will eventually thin. The cone that looked architectural in year 1 can lose its finish by year 3. The fix is simple. Before buying, ask exactly what the piece is made of. The solid sterling silver and solid gold pieces in the line are honest value for the design you are getting. The plated pieces are a costume in expensive clothing. Buy the architecture, skip the coating. Quick pause before the top 3. If a piece of jewelry you own has ever earned you a compliment from a complete stranger, drop it in the comments. The answers down there are almost always better than anything I could write into a script. Hit subscribe while you are at it, because what is coming next is where head-turning jewelry stops being affordable and starts being genuinely serious money. The last 3 brands on this list are not casual purchases. They are decisions. In third place, Sophie Buhai. The designer trained at Parsons in New York and spent a decade in the New York fashion world before going home to Los Angeles. A creative residency in Italy, surrounded by sculpture, turned her toward jewelry. That influence shows in everything that comes off her workbench. These are not exactly jewelry in the traditional sense. They are small sculptures worn on a body. Heavy sterling silver, hand-finished, in shapes that owe more to mid-century furniture than to anything in a mall jewelry case. Large dome earrings that read like polished river stones. Ear cuffs that wrap the lobe in one continuous sweeping curve. Necklaces built around a single massive oval pendant that catches light without a facet anywhere on the surface. This is what most people miss about jewelry that turns heads. The assumption is that sparkle does the work, and it does not. Sparkle competes inside a store, under engineered lights. In the real world, on a street, across a table, in candlelight, what draws the eye is form. A polished silver dome on an earlobe reads, "As confidence before anyone identifies the brand." The verdict on Sophie Buhai is clean. The silver is solid, not plated, which means it ages instead of degrading. The hand finishing is real, not implied by marketing copy. There is a premium baked into the price for the design language and for the name of the designer, but unlike fashion house jewelry, the material under that premium genuinely exists. For someone in the upper middle range who wants something nobody else at the dinner is wearing, this is one of the cleanest options on the market. Just understand the math behind the price. The silver is honest. The design fee is the brand. Both can be worth it for the right buyer. In second place, Bottega Veneta. Most luxury houses sell jewelry the same way they sell handbags, with the logo as the actual product. Bottega does the opposite. And that is precisely why their jewelry turns heads inside rooms where every other luxury brand goes unnoticed. There is no monogram. There is no double-letter clasp. There is no visible signature anywhere on the piece. What there is shape. The chain links are unusually heavy. The proportions are unusually architectural. The drop earrings are thick at the bottom and tapered at the top in a way almost no other house attempts. Inside a room where 10 women are wearing recognizable luxury, the one woman wearing something whose maker cannot be identified becomes the most interesting wrist or ear in the room. That is restraint as a strategy, and it works. The verdict on Bottega is where the conversation needs to be honest. The jewelry begins above $1,000 and climbs from there into territory that overlaps with serious fine jewelry pricing. The metals are real. The craft is real. The construction is the kind that does not warp, bend, or shed a clasp after one season of wear. But the Italian fashion house premium is real too. Part of the price is material and labor, and part of it is the building in Milan and the runway show. Whether the math works depends on what you want it for. If it is the silhouette and the longevity, you are getting something genuine. If it is a logo to flash at strangers, Bottega has deliberately refused to give you one. Look elsewhere. And finally, in first place, the most extreme entry on this list, David Webb. The brand opened in New York in 1948 in a small workshop, and the studio has produced jewelry the same way ever since. Every piece is made by hand in Manhattan. There is no factory in Italy. There is no outsourced casting in Asia. There are bench jewelers, enamel specialists, and stone setters working inside the same building the brand has occupied for decades. What comes out of that building is unlike anything else in luxury jewelry on Earth. And it is the reason David Webb pieces stop conversations mid-sentence. Picture a brooch shaped like a zebra, black enamel stripes laid into yellow gold one stripe at a time, over weeks, by hand. Picture a ring with a frog crouching on top, eyes set with cabochon emeralds, the whole creature finished in deep green enamel that catches light the way wet paint does. This is not jewelry that politely sits on a person. This is sculpture engineered to be worn on a body, and the effect across a room is close to gravitational. Strangers do not glance, they stare. A few of them recognize the workshop instantly. Most of them have simply never seen anything like it in their lives. And that is the entire point. The verdict on David Webb has to be different, because the category itself is different. This is not jewelry priced by gram weight or material spec. This is wearable art, sold in a tier that sits closer to gallery work than to product. The price reflects hours of handwork that mostly do not exist at scale anymore. A single enamel animal can take a craftsperson weeks of focused labor. The provenance is documented. The history is real. And here is the part that makes the math start to make sense for the correct buyer. David Webb has one of the strongest secondary market track records of any 20th century jewelry house. Vintage pieces appear regularly at major auction houses and tend to hold their value in a way almost no other luxury jewelry can match, because the supply is fundamentally limited by what one workshop can physically produce in a single year. You are not paying for grams of gold. You are paying for an object that will likely outlive everyone in the room. Is it right for most people? Absolutely not. Nobody should reach for a David Webb cuff as a first statement piece. But for a collector who already owns the foundations and wants something genuinely unrepeatable, this is one of the very few brands where the heads turning across the room are turning at something that truly deserves it. Step back from all five at once, and one pattern is impossible to ignore. What they share is not price. The Miansai cuff and the David Webb cuff are separated by a factor that feels uncomfortable to put in the same sentence. What they actually share is shape. Every brand on this list bet on form over branding, on silhouette over signature, on a piece the human eye recognizes before the brain identifies the maker. That is the real lesson buried inside every head-turning piece of jewelry you have ever noticed on a stranger. It was the geometry, not the logo. It was the proportion, not the price. It was the unusual shape sitting in a sea of familiar ones. There is a smarter version of this whole conversation worth ending on. If what you actually want is to be the person who walks into a room and gets noticed, you do not need any brand on this list to do it. You need a piece with the right silhouette for the way you actually live. Find a local independent jeweler who works in custom or small batch production. Bring them a photograph of a shape you love. Ask what it would cost to build in solid gold or solid silver instead of plated metal. The answer will surprise you. and it almost always comes in well under the markup at any luxury house. You will walk out wearing something nobody else on earth owns. The strangers who stop and stare will have no idea the piece was made for you by a person whose name they will never hear. They will only see the shape, which was the only thing that ever mattered. If this has changed your attitude towards other people's jewelry, click the like button and subscribe to Jewel Verdict. And write a comment describing one event that has ever caused you to be stopped on the street. The story behind a stranger's question is almost always more interesting than the material itself, and the best discoveries on this channel are made directly from these comments. See you in the next issue.